This episode of All Things Business, the podcast, is brought to you by our digital media partner, DFA Law. DFA Law, providers of expert and dedicated legal advice to businesses and families since 1838. DFA Law, the law firm for life.
Frazer,
Ben,
how are we?
very well, mate. Very well. On the road again.
I know. And what an this is probably my favourite venue so far. Where are we?
We are at the home of the MK Dons in the home dressing room, and shame there isn't smell-o-vision when people are watching this because it gives you a real sense of football.
I know, grass, as in grass on the field. Sorry, I should have just pointed that out. And a little bit of deep heat.
Oh yeah, it's all here.
Bit of sweat.
Yeah,
and plenty of 3 points.
Yeah, absolutely. Joined by Mike Williamson, head coach of the MK Dons. Mike, thanks for joining us. You'd have hopefully watched all of our podcast episodes before, so you'd know what to expect. But what we're going to touch on, an intro into Mike Williamson, who's the man behind the role. We're going to look at your early career, the end of your career, your managerial career, but then also you as a person. So, how's the city treating you?
Very nicely so far. Results obviously have made that a lot easier in terms of coming down here and so much to take in, so many moving parts and so much to get to grips with and get our teeth into. But yeah, whilst we've been doing that and the boys have been phenomenal, we've managed to pick up quite a few points and move ourselves up the league nicely to give us that opportunity to try to spin as many plates as we can and get to grips with like the size of the club. And like I said, it is impressive.
Yeah. I mean, there is a real feel-good factor in the stadium, around the stadium, in the city at the minute. So that mood's definitely been lifted since you joined. So well done.
Thank you very much. Yeah. But it's the credits to the boys, obviously. For such a turnaround in such a short period of time, we can't take credit for that. It's all on the lads and the desire to learn and to listen and to really try and have to play with the bravery and the courage that we do, and they've just taken it tenfold and run with it.
I can see Ben chomping with a question to come in there, so I'll try and beat him to it. But you say you can't take credit on that. Surely there's football fans watching this now. The head coach, you're the main cheerleader for everybody.
You're the visionary, Mike.
The visionary.
The boys are being brought into you, and I mean, when we spent we had dinner together a couple of weeks ago, and I really bought into the philosophy and the vision that you've got, particularly with your coaching staff, because you are one team. And I was actually surprised. I thought there might be a few more of you than what there is. But yeah, you're leading the way there from the front.
Yeah, and I suppose that for me, I don't need to be critical of myself or to give myself too much credit, because it's almost irrelevant to me at this moment. So yeah, I suppose taking the praise, I'm happy to take the praise. Of course, I've got my part to play, but there's just so many moving parts, and the nucleus of the turnaround is mainly the boys, and they need that credit as well.
So take us back to where it started. I think back at Torquay
United, yeah.
Yeah, and just remind us, and I think the best way to do this is probably to remind us of the players you played with and talk us through your starting 11, purely based on best players that you played with, from Torquay all the way through.
There's a question. So, I'm half expecting you guys to take me back. It's been quite a few years, so the memories might be a bit hazy. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, the players that I've been fortunate enough to play with, incredible. The calibre, the standard, obviously littered with internationals.
Let's start in goal then. Who's the best keeper that you've played with?
This is hard because there's so much that goes into this in terms of the career that they've had, the time period that I was playing with them, and also the emotional connection, the value, that side. So, I mean, some of the goalkeepers I've played with, big fan of Frazer. as a human being, especially. Lucky enough, David James obviously speaks for himself.
Yeah. He put the gloves back on recently, didn't he, for a Sunday League team?
Yeah. And World Cup winning Aston Villa goalkeeper who I made a few appearances with when he was on loan at Wolves.
Oh, really? Martinez.
Yeah.
I see the predicament straight away.
So and then obviously at Newcastle, Tim Krul and Steve Harper. There's.
Go on then, pick one. You got to pick one.
To be honest, David James.
Okay, good.
I think.
I was hoping you were going Emmy then, but I knew it was going to be David James. Right, into defence. You're in the middle of the park.
Right.
I think I already know who's next to you, but
Yeah.
I'll let you spoil the surprise for everybody unless I do.
Yes, I think Fabrizio Collicini. Obviously, I'm a big fan of him as a human being, and I think that's something that we'll continually touch on. And yeah, he was one of them where when I was playing next to him, I constantly just say, you need to calm down as banter, because when he was doing what he was doing, I was dropping bricks.
I can imagine.
In the 18-yard box, he was just so cool, so calm, always in control of the ball. And yeah, he was a pleasure and a joy to watch, let alone play with. And I just love his South American loyalty. A few things went on off the pitch, and he was such a guy that's got you back if you're close with him, and I just love that as a personality trait.
Cool. And then what, are we going back three, or are we going traditional?
Let's go 4-4-2.
Should we go 4-4-2?
Throw out names and then
go on then. Who's your right back?
Again, you've got Debuchy, French international. I loved playing with Danny Simpson.
Yeah.
For me, very underrated. He was a colourful character, a bit of a playboy, but he was just honest as the day's long, and outwardly say you play hard and train hard, which I don't mind. I respect that. Russell Martin, in my early days, who I'm very close with, and he's in there. So I think I'm gonna have to go Russ.
Yeah.
Russ,
For the emotional value.
Yeah, I like this.
A bit controversial.
Left back.
Left back. Probably. Again, I'm going to kick myself when I watch this back, and I've got it because there'll be so many players I'm missing out. But probably Jose Enrique.
Oh,
Why? Who?
Yeah, I mean I forgot about him.
Yeah,
Not bad.
Yeah.
I said this when I was looking at it, and I was wowed by the players, and I said to Arthur Enrique, and he did the same as you.
Yeah, I forgot.
Wow.
Definitely.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah. Jonas Gutierrez, he's filled in left back. I think he played there for Argentina as well.
Yeah.
And again, another unbelievable human being. And he probably won't be even in the team.
Go on then, central midfield, two midfielders.
So for me, Johan Cabaye, he's a pretty solid one for me.
Honestly, it's a great list. It really is.
Yeah. He's his passing range. He also
Both feet.
quite nasty. Had an edge about him as well, which you've got to have to play at the levels he's played at. I think quite a simple one. When he came in, you could see he was good, and over the time he just got better, and he was so important. Scored some goals and assists, and he'd just keep everything ticking over. And he just the simple thing of making things look easy. That was one of his biggest strengths. And then I don't know. Again, Chet Tiote.
Yeah. Taken far too early, but what a player.
Yeah, what a guy. 100 miles an hour, everything he did.
Yeah.
Somebody who you're desperate to have on your team in training and not against, because he would just eat you and go through you, and his warm-ups were more intense than most people's actual full sessions.
Really?
Yeah, he was just a
Incredibly
machine.
fit guy.
Incredibly fit guy, yeah. But then, yeah, you've got when I first came to Newcastle, Nicky Butt, Alan Smith, Kevin Nolan, massive players.
Yeah.
Hugely talented players with ridiculous careers. So yeah, but them two were an unbelievable partnership.
Yeah.
Worked well, and it was just unbelievable to have Czech in front of you, because anything was there, he'd just go and eat it up, and did a lot of my job for me.
Wide right side of midfield.
Wide right. Again, we'll have to tell me what number we're on. Well, you've got people like Kevin Prince Boateng. When I was at Portsmouth with him, he was an absolute joke. You've got Hatem Ben Arfa.
Yeah.
Who?
I know, it's amazing.
I know.
He was.
I forgot completely about Boateng.
Yep.
Yeah, like for me.
Did Harry Redknapp sign him?
He might have done, yeah. That was.
Yeah, that's
coming after with Paul Hart. Genie Wijnaldum.
Oh my gosh. I forgot about Genie. Huh?
There's so many that you.
We might have to change this to a 4-3-3. You got to have Genie in there.
Got to have Genie in there.
Yeah.
Yeah. He was.
Yeah, he's an unbelievable footballer as well.
Over.
No, you just play him. Forget Kevin Prince Boateng. I'm sorry.
Ben Arfa.
Yeah, I would, and I'd change the shape of it now. I know I said 4-4-2, but you got to go 4-3-3 with them.
I think we found out who's managing the team while you're.
Sorry,
playing,
Mike. Yeah,
you crack on.
Right. Let's go up top now. Let's have a look at the strikers. Yeah,
3 up top.
because this is going to be incredible as well.
It's a great list.
Wow. For me, training against Scholler was. I mean, he had a ridiculous career. He's scored in, I think, the San Siro, and played, in the Champions League days. And you go back on the Premiership years, he seems to be on all of them.
Yeah, consistent.
Yeah, very consistent. Yeah. But in training, he was an absolute joke. Like, he's obviously an absolute unit. He was powerful, but he loved to just chop on either foot and put it in the top corner.
Deceivingly quick as well, from what I remember.
Yeah, just so powerful.
Yeah.
When he got going, you couldn't stop him. So I think if he's got to be the focal point.
Yeah.
And then
And then last two off of him maybe, or you can.
Well, yeah. I said Genie's got to be in there, obviously, and Hatem, the two off him. So what you got? Yohan Cabaye, Chet Tiote. So do we need another midfielder?
We need another midfielder.
Yeah.
Any ideas?
Well, I mean, you could chuck. Well, I mean, Nicky Butt ain't a bad one, is he?
No, it's not.
Yeah.
No.
I mean, there's. Yeah, I think that's that has exceeded my expectations, Mike, already. Just looking at that 11.
Yeah.
So now that sort of brings me on in terms of the transition, because you've obviously played at the elite level. You've played for arguably one of the biggest clubs in England. I think every probably with the exception of a Sunderland fan, every other football fan can appreciate how passionate the Geordies are. And I think St James's Park could probably sell 80,000, 90,000 tickets week in, week out if they had a big enough stadium.
Yeah.
How has the transition gone from that to now becoming a football manager? How have you found that?
Thoroughly enjoyable. I think that I've been fortunate enough again to play with players, and I feel as though everybody you come in contact with, you take something from, whether it's conscious or unconscious, good or bad. So getting to the level that I did and playing through all the leagues and having the amount of experiences I've had, it's just given me more of a world view of appreciation. And I feel like I come from a humble background in terms of from my parents, and it's always just been in me. I don't think I've had to try, which I'm very fortunate and blessed to have a very supportive background in my time. So then when I've kind of had the privilege to play at the levels and been involved in some of the games that I have done, and been fortunate enough to have some promotions along the way. I've understood it's the journey, and it's the connection, and it's relationships. And I know we can talk about psychology, and we can talk cliches, and there's plenty out there. But actually, when you do really understand that, then it doesn't really matter what level you operate at. It's still the basic mechanics of a successful group of people. So everything I see moving forward is an opportunity and a privilege to have the challenge. So therefore, it doesn't matter what level I'm working at. Everything's enjoyable. So.
Do you know what I loved? And you said it a number of times when you start in 11 there. I love him as a human being. And I thought that was... Like, I've only just met you today, right? Read a lot about you, seen you a lot, heard a lot of people speak very, very highly of you. Such a humble guy, very spiritual, extremely down to earth, driven, focused on all of that. And it's coming out of you in every single word that you say. And I can imagine the boys sat around here on a Saturday in midweek listening and eating up everything that you say.
It's a different type of manager that when I was fortunate to have dinner with you at the event a couple of weeks ago, there was one thing that stuck with me, and you said something around, it's about being a good human being. And generally, if you're a good human being in life, you'll succeed in whatever you do. And that, so simple, but resonated with me. And when you look at, we've been fortunate enough to interview players and other managers over recent years, but I don't know why, you sort of visualise what they'd be like in that 5 minutes before kickoff, really getting into the boys. But I would run for a brick wall for you, and and there's other managers.
Well, wouldn't stand a chance.
Yeah. as there would be other managers as well, but it's a completely different scale. And I would imagine that the boys here have probably played for some very different managers in terms of style and what those talks are like. So with that in mind, is there a manager that you've learnt from that you've gone, actually, I want to take a little bit of him or a little bit of him and bring that into my career now going forward?
Yeah.
Before Mike answers that, there's some heavy hitters on the managers list that Mike's played for. You've got Steve McLaren, Brendan Rodgers, Alan Pardew, Avram Grant, Malky Mackay. You've got some proper...
Frazer has done his research.
Influential managers. Those are just off the top of my head. I can't remember what's written down behind me. I'm sure I'm missing one. Yeah, as Ben said, have any of those stood out, or have you learned something from all of them?
Yeah, I mean, like I've touched on before, I think that everyone you come into contact, you take a little bit from. And I mean, yeah, I can go through so many attributes that they have shown and that I've experienced with Chris Hughton. Again, very family orientated person, very value centric person, which I'm drawn to. Paul Lambert, somebody who came in to Wickham, his first job in England, couldn't understand a word he was saying, and but he's somebody that when you earn his respect, I literally, even when I see him today, he's not got a good word to say to my face. So he'll always say, "You're still robbing a living." That's his kind of go-to when I see him. But I know that whenever in the press, he always backs me, and I feel like he knows he could hang his hat on me and me as a player, because you just know what you're going to get. Yeah. I'm going to make mistakes, but I'm just going to try. You know what I mean? I'm going to give what I've got. So I love that about him. And yeah, the Brendan Rodgers, how meticulous he was. And again, I tell the story that my wife fell in love with him when we met, because he was on his knees with my kids. And it was just that, wow, I've not come across that before.
Just getting to know the family.
Yeah, that side of it. And then in training, he was very meticulous in training. I remember him kind of being like, right, training today is going to be 42 minutes. And he'd be like, right, 30 seconds, drinks break. And everything was on the clock, and you'd finish. And you'd only done 42 minutes, but yeah, you felt like you'd given everything. So I thought, that was very good. But yeah, people like Alan Pardew, who Openly, I would say when I was there, I probably didn't understand the pressure he was under, and our relationship grew stronger. And I think on both sides, I think I played more later on, and my understanding what he was dealing with was increasing. And yeah, like I say, there's so many different things. I had a brief spell under Tony Adams at Wickham. Huge character. And I just love people that are just themselves. So it's weird and wacky. And that's what I try and get the lads to see who I work with, because as much as you say you run through a brick wall, which is nice for you to say, I'm not the most articulate when sometimes I'm in those times, because I've always been quite an introverted, shy human being growing up. So coming into management, it was a little bit what I found in my career is when something sparks in me of a bit of fear, and I'm like, well, I've got to do it now. It's one of them where, as a kid, you get those butterflies, you get that bit feeling of whatever you call it, anxiety, whatever, and it makes you want to shy away from it. But as I kind of stayed with the course, I realised, well, that's what I want. So if I felt, and then when the opportunities for management came up, I was just like, that would test me in the areas of my social life. So I was like, right, I've got to do it. I've got to see, even if I crash and burn, I way prefer to do that than just go, actually, no, it's not for me.
And then think what might have been.
I think that's really passionate on the, not putting words in your mouth, but the biggest motivator is fear. And how many people are scared to be able to do it? How many kids are out there playing football today that they're scared to give that extra 5%, that extra 10% to go into that tackle, to take that chance or that opportunity? But it could be one of the best things that they ever do.
And that's something that I'm thoroughly enjoying with this challenge of what is fear. Like, let's break fear down, because we live in a world now where all our basic needs are met. So the fear is inside of yourself. So actually it's self-induced. Obviously, the higher you go, the amount of noise externally is a lot more. The media, social media plays a huge part, but that's another area for conversation. But actually the fear is derived inside of you. So it's exactly what I was speaking to the boys today, talking about along their journey. If I can try and help them to understand one thing, is they're going to have so many managers that are just miles off it, that miss things, that get things wrong, that find ways to disrupt their path and what they want. They're going to have fans, they're going to have injuries, they're going to have so many challenges, but actually the biggest opponent in their career is themselves. And it's that simple. So when you dial it down into progression and on this journey, it's actually, if you actually fully understand you're your own worst enemy, then you can start going into that a little bit, and then going back to the...
I find it fascinating that you've got this outlook in such a I'm going to say alpha male industry, if you like, because you'd like to think that most footballers are extroverts, but they won't be. You'll have I mean, I don't know what it would be, but even if it was a 50-50 split or a 80-20 split in the favour of extroverts v introverts, but how have you found the transition of that in terms of players responding to it? Because I imagine that some of them might not have got you straight away, but then others have bought into it immediately. Would that be fair?
Yeah, and I think it's fair to say that when I first came in, I basically just tried to say to the boys, look, whatever I'm not going to give them a presentation, because anyone can sit there and have the all singing and dancing presentation with this is the culture, this is the environment, all the buzzwords, all the kind of motivational slogans. I'm going to say it's about us developing this relationship of trust. So the more you can trust me, the more you possibly will be able to show vulnerability behind this, in the office, and the more growth that we can have together. But ultimately, it's about the relationship of us being authentic to ourselves and each other, and knowing that I might not have, the chat, or I might not look the part, or I might, but actually my heart's in the right place. But I've got to prove that to you. And I can't just tell you it is, because that's just nonsense. and we all say, oh, I'm a good person, but it's all just, I've got to actually show you with actions, and the way I go about things.
I think it's a great thing. We always talk about the synergy between business and sport. Generally, it's business and football that we talk about. But no matter what line or industry you're in, people buy people. And people can smell out a bullshitter a mile off. But there's not even an air of that about you. Everything that you say has gone straight in and resonated and sat with me. You're so calm and collected.
Yeah, have you ever lost your rag yet?
Yeah, have you done a Fergie? Which way's the boots flew in this office, in this changing room?
Have you lost it?
I mean, if you speak to Ian and Chris, then
I get that. Yeah,
so,
for sure.
But I remember there was once I lost it at Gateshead. But the reason I lost it was because I felt on the pitch we were not giving everything for a fear of looking stupid, and that's my biggest pet hate, because I've lived my whole life of wanting to be comfortable in my own skin, and I think that's the biggest thing that we can all try and achieve. And I said to the boys the other day, I remember having conversations with players, and obviously the likes of what I've just named, they're big icons, and I'm going in, and I remember having certain conversations, and I'd agree with them on things I didn't agree with.
Okay, just to be comfortable in the situation.
Yeah. So
how many businesses does that happen to?
Yep.
Yeah.
I'll bet you every workplace in the city, there'll be people that'll be like that around the
was
boardroom.
it a yes person? You just
Yeah. It's just, you're just trying to have a bit of connection and build a bit of rapport and be accepted. And that's the bottom line is, if I don't accept myself, whatever your opinion is, I'll jump on it and be like, yeah, you're right. He's an idiot. He's this, and we should have been doing this, even if I don't. And I remember going away thinking, what are you doing? Mm-hmm. Like, what's the crack here? And then I realised it's acceptance. You're just searching for acceptance through other people and validations for myself. Where now I feel as though hopefully I'm comfortable enough to be like, right, okay, that's interesting. Why do you think that? I'm right, okay, well, I think that's nonsense. And still be, comfortable with who I am and just being honest. And I try and create an environment in my office with all the lads, and Busty is now firmly comfortable with his feet under his table, and he will speak to me in certain ways. And I can see people that don't know our relationships will look, and nothing's off limits. Do you know what I mean? Because we have such schoolboy banter and jokes, and I love him and he loves me. And that's
like me and you, Fraser. You could be my Busty.
There's another
new nickname.
There's another joke
Fraser,
in
Busty.
Yeah.
And I don't mean you top.
That's what I was waiting for. I was going to get that in with you. I really wanted to get that in. Take us back to, we probably missed this part. The start of your career, when you were playing youth grassroots football.
Yep.
Biggest cheerleader when Mike was there on a Saturday and Sunday morning? Who was the one that was always there that you could always talk to after the game? Was your biggest fan and biggest critique? Who's
Mum and Dad.
Yeah?
Yeah, my dad. Famous story, and I'm sure that as many people have got the same story of he grew up in Stoke-on-Trent, that's where I was born. Moved down to Torquay when I was young. And he was a valiant Port Vale through and through. And he had trials, and his parents told him to get a real job. So never actually went to it, and that was his story. So he's essentially lived his career through me. But
so two of you robbing a living.
Aye, two of us robbing, yeah. Spot on. And they what I can say about my parents is they were both they created such a security at home, where my dad would always say something, listen, as long as you tell me the truth, I'll back you. So you could have, robbed the local shop, and if you come back and say, look, Dad, I've robbed the shop, he'd be like, right, well, tell me everything, and then we'll work a way to get you out of it, because we've got, and family's the most important. And that was always like, right, okay, my current wife is just like, that's a load of nonsense. I'd be shopping them like they've got got to learn their lesson. But
it was acceptable in the 80s.
Yes, times have changed. But the whole point is, like, again, a bit like the Paul Lambert thing. I think that's why that resonated. But I knew he had my back.
Yeah.
So then, in my head, I feel like I could go out and I could deal with a lot of adversity and pain.
Yeah.
Because that was my kind of foundation, and it was my comfort place, I suppose, my security place.
Yeah.
So yeah, he was the one, take me anywhere, do anything.
And in management, in terms of that, either mentor or critique, is it your coaches, or have you got friends in football, or other people that you ring up if you're having a bad time, or you want to?
Not necessarily when I'm having a bad time, because I'm quite self-analytical, and I always feel as though, I mean, I've got my family, so I've got 5 kids, beautiful wife, so they're my release.
They're your why as well.
They bring me down to earth with, doesn't matter what the scoreline, I've got kids to put to bed. So yeah,
it's the biggest thing.
Yeah, and that's the biggest thing. And and I go back, and my boys now are both obsessed and watch every game and try and come down, criticise my substitutions and my team selection. Why didn't you bring him, or why didn't you bring on Harrison quicker, sooner, and all of this? And I'm like, right, okay. So I have to kind of like.
Do you sit them down and tell them, or do you just put them to bed?
Yeah, go clip round the ear. Get to bed. No, I try and explain the best I can, but it's never enough and never right. So, but yeah, no, they're my constants. They're my kind of North Star. But yeah, of course, I've got friends who, I've got anything football related. If there's something going on with a player and I think, it's a little bit kind of, I try and get some advice of like, what would you do? What would be the best thing? Yeah. But ultimately, I always just think that most of the time, if you've got someone in your life that gives you sound advice, if you just stopped in your head, asked them the question, you could probably recite what they're going to say to you.
Yeah. I often do that with my dad. Yeah. And one of the things that he's drummed into me from a young age, 2 things. 1, I gave you your name, son. It's a good name. It's down to you if you lose it. And 2 is that truth, that honesty. And I think that's probably a generational thing. Yeah. But in terms of always be honest. Always be honest and be kind, and so there's some similar values there for sure. So here we are now, not long until the end of the season, but what success is obviously promotion. Yeah, is it a case of we don't care how we get there as long as we get there, or talk us through where you are as we approach the last few games of the season?
Yeah, so. I've got to be careful with my language that I don't devalue being promoted. Yeah. Because of course that is this football club and its foundation is set up to be in the higher leagues. Okay, so of course that is why we're here, brought in to win, and that is the bottom line. But what I try and always do is bring it back to the mission and the process. And I think that if your metrics are just in any which way, then you stop being able to measure the progression, why we're here. And again, talking into cliches and things like that, but they're there for a reason. These quotes are there because they hold weight. Yeah. And the fact is, if we can just focus on today, on this session right now. So if I'm right here now talking to you guys and I'm thinking about everything else, I'm not giving everything to this now. So that state of mind, that presence, and that relates to the boys in training. So if we are thinking about all 7 games at once, then again, taking that into the boardroom, which is a business life, it's when I listen to people that own their own business and they talk about forecasts, I've never done a forecast longer than a year, because in the heart of hearts I don't believe in it. Right.
Because so much can change in the world of business, particularly in our industry. It's almost like a wasted effort saying what we're going to do in 2025 and 2026.
Yeah.
I know what we'll want to do,
Yeah.
but to be honest, I'm only going to get there if we achieve the goals over the next 3 months, because then that will determine the 3 months after.
Yeah.
But I've always, and it comes back to a point you mentioned earlier about having that acceptance, when you're in that environment of people where they're talking about, I've probably been guilty of that, where I've gone, forecasts. And I've probably played that because I didn't want to stand out from the crowd for being in the minority, if that makes sense.
No, I get that.
But everything you've just said there is spot on, because it doesn't matter if you're in football, elite level sport, football, rugby, or in business, and it doesn't matter if your business turn over £1 million, 10 million quid. I mean, as soon as you start to get to certain levels and you've got shareholders, etc., they definitely ain't going to be
Slightly different.
They definitely, yeah, exactly. But the principles is the same, and I think that's a really interesting point.
You can strip that back to education as well. That we're all 11 years old. What do we want to do when we're older? What are we going to do with our GCSEs?
What are the results?
Let's get through 11 and 12 because they're challenging years anyway.
Yeah.
There's a lot of things that are going to come in between and everything. I've thoroughly enjoyed this, Mike. I was really excited to talk to you about the football, but I think I've actually enjoyed hearing more about you. It's quite hard to accept certain things of when you are the way that you are. That I said this a couple of months back, that I made rejection my best friend years ago, because not everybody's going to say yes to you in sales, and people get upset by it. But as people, we circulate and radiate to other nice people, and I think that just comes out of you massively. So regardless, and I do wish the Dons get promoted and to continue to succeed, but wherever you go in life, I wish you nothing but the best, mate. Really do.
Thank you very much.
Same here, and I want to be driving the bus around all the roundabouts.
Through the roundabouts. Hold on tight.
That
we're
weekend
going
in
over.
May. Yeah. But Mike, fantastic. Thank you ever so much.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Thank you.